All right, we're live.
All right, thank you. And this is the Annapolis Environmental Commission, our September 2024 meeting. We are currently waiting for other members to show up and give us a quorum or a notice from them of their absence. We are expecting potentially a couple more, and just holding on while we figure this out.
Hi there. Sorry, I was having technical issues.
No worries, Jenny. We've already gone live just in case anyone was waiting for us. Um, and we're expecting maybe Paul to show up and perhaps Linda. We don't have any decisions on our agenda, but if we're a little, maybe one more member closer to quorum, that would at least be good for discussion purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's Paul. Perfect. Once he connects. Hey, Paul, welcome. We have gone live. We were just waiting to get a couple more folks, so that we're not quite at quorum yet, but you put us pretty close. And I have heard from Bill that he plans to join us, but he'll be late, so probably halfway through the meeting, as scheduled. But again, we don't have any minutes or other decision points expected, so it's really just for discussion.
Jeremy,
Yes, Paul.
did you get that article I sent where they were talking about animals grazing in solar farms?
Oh, now that you mention it.
I think I texted it to you.
Okay, yeah, I didn't read that. It showed up as a very weird looking message in my
Okay,
email.
no, that's fair enough. With all the hacking going on these days. Um, so if you're just waiting a little bit, this was interesting because what I'm talking about obviously is our solar farm, and it would sure be nice to think you could do um, not have to use chemicals to get rid of some of the growth. So if any of you subscribe to the Washington Post, or even if you don't, this might Google, showed up yesterday. The headline was Under a Texas Sun, Agrivoltaics. So mashing agriculture and voltaics together. Under a Texas Sun, agrivoltaics offer farmers a new way to make money.
That
And
is interesting.
yeah, and there's an association. What's really kind of interesting is because, you know, myself, like probably most of you, we're generalists. Well, some of you have expertise in a certain area, but as far as grazing versus chemicals to get rid of growth, none of us are experts at that. But there's an association of grazing in solar farms, so they've got to have some knowledge. I just can't see how. Well, I can see how. I just would really prefer to find a way that's better than using chemicals to get rid of some of our growth, particularly since it's uphill of the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
And thank you for that reading recommendation, Paul.
Yeah.
I think there was also in one of our meetings, Jackie was saying they started talking to somebody about instead of using chemicals to clear out the vegetation, doing like a multi-year seeding strategy where they can start kind of putting in plugs and putting there's a machine they can use to insert the seeds for the plants that we would want to start putting there. And then that way you don't have to clear it out all at once with chemical. So I like to think that that's still on the table. But at first they were talking about just using some kind of chemical Roundup or whatever to just clear out all the vegetation, and then I think it went to doing like a little test piece area. And I don't know what size that is or anything. Maybe Dylan knows.
Yeah, I think we do have an update expected on that, and there was something in the written update it was sent out as
Mhm.
well. It sounds like there is a contractor selected for that first phase.
Okay.
Well, since we are expecting Bill to join us later, I know we're not at quorum right now, but we can still start, right? I actually don't fully know the rules front and back, but I assume we can still have the meeting. We're just not able to make any decisions. So I think I will call us to order and at least um, get us underway with a quick roll call. So I'm Jeremy Hansen. I'm chair for the city's Environmental Commission. I'll go around here. Jenny, our vice chair.
Jenny Janice, Vice Chair, and Ward 6.
Kathy
Good evening, Kathy Lester, Board 5.
and Paul.
Paul Murphy, Ward 2.
Great. And so with only 4 commissioners, we do not have a quorum. And I'll turn Dylan for the city.
Hello all, my name is Dylan Lakunich, Environmental Programs Coordinator.
Right. And if we pick up other commissioners, we will have a quorum, but we have an agenda, we have time and space for discussion. So I figure we might as well have it tonight. So appreciate everyone for joining, and maybe we'll pick up, I think, up to 2 others. We'll see. All right. So the main thing we had space on our agenda tonight for was to just have discussion of current or emerging opportunities for green space or tree planting around the city. I think we've talked around this topic at previous meetings, and there were some developments over the past month, or really since we first started coming up with this agenda. Things have evolved as well, even further. But there's at least a couple partials or developments in particular that might be, or may have been, or may still be ripe for potential improvements within the city limits. So we'll talk about that and then just get through other roundabout updates on other projects from the city. And I have 1 or 2 other miscellaneous topics that we'll get to. So with that, were there any other topics or things people want to add or try to get to tonight?
No, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah. Well, we have a small but mighty group, so we'll see how much time, if we are ahead of schedule, and then early, since we did start so late, I still want to keep us to a 9 o'clock end time. So with that, the discussion around emerging opportunities for green space or tree planting, don't have any visual aids prepared or anything, but and Dylan, I'll turn to you on some of the details here, but there at City Council on Monday night, there was a proposal or a resolution that was withdrawn regarding 245 West Street, that defunct gas station that's been sitting there for a while. The city was going to condemn and I guess take control of that parcel through eminent domain, but that was withdrawn given the fact that there's apparently a developer seeking to buy it from the current owner, and that's under negotiation, as I understand it. So not sold or under contract, but potentially being sold. So that was withdrawn by the council. But that resolution, I think, sparked some ideas or possibilities thinking about that parcel and the parcel across the street between the existing row, was it those shops and things on the the east side, and then the larger Westgate sort of development on the west side. There's still that empty parcel and lot that's pretty gravelly, a mix of gravel, grass, some trees in the back. So those were a couple of the parcels I had in mind. And of course, the Athens development, which, as we understand it, or as I understand it, the city has given that developer every opportunity and then some to get back up to pace. And it sounds as if that developer has just disappeared. To use the technical term, I don't know what's really going on there, but that obviously has already been cleared and graded, and there's been some other work. I think some of the sewer lines or things have been put in, but that is sitting there and could be an opportunity, perhaps, if not for development, then maybe some other project that would benefit the city or the environment. Not as much as its original state, but that we've already lost the trees. So, Dylan, were there any other opportunities that you or Jackie wanted to include in the discussion, or corrections to anything I said?
Regarding tree planting or improving public spaces, not at this time. I wouldn't want to bring up anything prematurely. But yeah, those spaces I think had some potential. Regarding that, the Athens property, I think from what I understand, it looks like it's going to be developed anyways by another group. I'll have to double check on that. But yeah, just like you said, the 245 properties being negotiated. Who knows if they end up, making the final offer and it gets accepted. And then regarding that other space across the street, well, yes, it is kind of this gravel, grassy, wooded mix. Maybe there's some potential to do something with that. From what we understand, that the current owner of that site doesn't really have any intention of developing it or selling it soon. It seems to kind of be a holding. But yeah, we'll keep on looking into things like this. We know that there's only so much space in the city, sort of reforest. So we'll keep an eye out.
Yes, Kathy.
I was reading an article recently, and I don't remember if it was in the Washington Post or the New York Times, but it was about, or even where in the country it was, but it was about schools and how much pavement they have, like especially around the playground areas, and how some jurisdictions are really kind of renovating those areas so that they are more. There's more tree shade, less pavement. They're not don't become those little heat islands. So I'll try and find that article and send it to everyone. And the other, and I don't know how this would ever come about, but I know whenever I drive through the design district, right? I mean, there's barely a tree in sight there. It's got to be a hot spot in Annapolis, and I know it's all private sector. But I don't know what opportunities there are for an area like that are so treeless. I mean, there are a few trees to plant more trees in areas like that are going to be that are hot spots.
Paul, I think I'm hearing your typing coming through.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you might want to mute when you're typing.
Copy. You're correct.
Appreciate it.
Kathy, I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch which area you were talking about. I understood. I caught everything else.
Oh, the design district off Chinquapin Road.
Okay.
Yeah, which is, I mean, fantastic place to poke around in there, but it is very, very treeless. And I don't know if there would be any way to plant in there, but I always think about that when I'm driving around there.
Yeah. In those kind of more, I guess, contemporary developments, a lot of the streets and even the right-of-ways end up being too wide. So I've worked on projects before to actually kind of slim that down. Obviously, I'm not saying this is something that I can just get done tomorrow. It would take a lot of, AOKs. But a lot of times, like I'm saying, that pavement doesn't need to be there per se. So that could be one point of potential. I remember I was looking at a urban heat island map of the city recently, and that was one of the areas that had the greatest risk of developing urban heat island effect. So you're definitely right. It's a good area to look at.
The other, I'm glad you bring that up, because as the West Street parcels get looked at and have, something proposed for them, there's opportunity to, evaluate what the right of way is, or to work with the owner to put trees along the street at least, with some, maybe some other plantings underneath. Even if it's just, that small strip, it starts to kind of maybe be a trend that way.
Mhm.
And I don't know, so this is kind of this is something that I've observed. I don't know if this is like really, I don't know what can be done for this, whether it's like an education program or something. But when I've noticed, when a lot of these requirements go in with tree plantings for new developments, either when they first put them in or over time, they are installing not only just the same kind of tree, but also they are oftentimes the installation companies mounding up at the base so that the tree's not going to have a good chance of having, a long life. It'll live for a number of years, but eventually that just makes them sick. So there's there's the location, right? And then there's some like requirements already in place, for new developments and things to put trees in. But then there's the actual installation in a way that ensures longevity and a high functioning tree, so that it is functioning as a heat island reduction, stormwater absorption, biodiversity, all that. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point that I've heard before, and it's something I really need to look into. I'm sure it wouldn't take me that terribly long. So thank you for bringing that up. I have wondered if it maybe has something to do with, root depth and the potential for invasive roots to interrupt infrastructure, damage infrastructure. So that could be an explanation, but frankly, I doubt it. So yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that.
Yeah, and I have some technical experience in this as a landscape architect, and there's definitely ways around that. There's a lot of really simple solutions that might cost a little bit more, but the mounding up of the mulch is really just we got to put mulch here.
Yeah.
And we have this little bit of area, and so we're just going to mound it up, and it's just it's all too frequent.
So you're saying you think it has nothing to do with invasive roots?
That the mulch part, no, it has nothing to do with the invasive roots. And if there's an issue in your conversations with invasive roots and utilities, there are things like root barriers that are, literally plastic, thick plastic, or like rubber, geomembranes and things that you can put on the edges where your concern is for the to protect the utilities. And then that kind of steers the roots to go further down past the utilities. That gets into a whole other, I know how complicated the utilities are in the public right of way. So it gets into like a way more detailed conversation, but there are solutions.
Oh, thank you for that.
I want to acknowledge Marianne, who's joined us, and I believe she's traveling, so I'm not sure if she's able to unmute or speak to us, but glad to see her online. Marianne, if you are able to talk and just want to test your audio, please do so. we'll assume that my information was correct. And she is gonna just be in listen mode with us this evening. But thank you for joining, Marianne. All right, so, oh, Marianne, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm good. I'm just going to be intermittent, so I'll pipe in when I can.
Roger that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, great.
All right. Well, yeah, so back, and I know some other areas that have come up in past discussions. Bill has mentioned some of the areas out over by the courthouse and the Navy Stadium, there being some large open fields, or perhaps other parcels that could be ripe for expanding canopy. But I don't know that area as well as far as ownership and rights that may be involved. And given the situation with that's already happened in the last week, really, after I'd already drafted the agenda, I'm not sure if this might be less of an ideal time than we thought to try to make a case for some of these areas. But I was thinking maybe something the commission can do is just writing a letter to council and the mayor, just trying to support using these parcels either as connections to the park network, providing outdoor recreational space, green space, mixed uses, just something better than current state of concrete or heavily compacted soil. So any other areas or parcels people want to bring up, or other things, other aspects of this people want to discuss? If not, we can probably just move on. There are plenty of updates from the city we can get to.
Jeremy, I don't mind drafting a letter like that and sharing it with you, and then we can pass around, because I don't know exactly what parcel to propose, but I think as things come up within the city, just having that as, refreshing that as an important piece of review could be, because I think there's opportunities on, it doesn't have to be wholly owned by the city. I think there can be, we're gonna have to have to install trees here and there as we can along, the streets to kind of reduce heat island effect. And so as there's little spaces, when projects come to review, and if they don't have trees, can say, hey, can you, it's important. The commission thinks it's important to try and put some trees in here, and that helps the forester meet his goals as well.
Yeah, and I think it is a really good time in the sense that with the public water access plan and the comprehensive plan just getting done, like now's a really great time to think about like voicing that support. Like these parcels are already privately owned, and they can get bought or sold rather quickly out of nowhere. And things can move quickly, as we saw with Athens, like before really anyone knew what was happening, it was already cleared of trees. So
Mhm.
for the most part, hey, it'd be a shame as these opportunities continue to disappear. So within city limits, we only have so many opportunities left.
Right. Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
So I appreciate you, Jenny, offering to draft that letter, and we can work together offline, send it around, maybe have it up for discussion or a vote next month. But I'll note this is definitely consistent with our priorities as we drafted them already. Kathy?
I know we talked about this a little bit, but so private residential homes, right? And encouraging people to plant trees. Although I know there's a segment of people who don't like trees, right? They don't want the leaves, they don't want the mess. But when I was looking at like the list of stuff you guys have been working on, Dylan, when I saw like Bird City and Bee City and the wildlife community and, the opportunity for people to have like the pollinator garden or whatever. And I've been thinking about people's lawns, right? So this is not like removing pavement, but are there efforts aligned with those efforts? Is there, do they include educational material about the benefits of reducing the amount of lawn that people have and putting in gardens and maybe more trees instead? Because, everything I read about lawns, it's monoculture. They're not really healthy for the ecosystem overall. Is that a facet of how we could be thinking about encouraging more trees, and if not trees, just more gardens, pollinators, native plants, things like that, instead of lawns?
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely goes beyond, putting down trees just for the sake of, urban healing effect. You're also trying to create habitat corridors and, ensure there's, substantive biodiversity. I did actually recently make an addition to the resilience and sustainability page, just kind of providing a small little guide. I realize I can't drop it in here. For establishing pollinator habitat in your own yard. So I can share that with you guys, and I would love some feedback, just so I can get some better outreach materials out there. But yeah, I think more public-private partnership with general residents would be a great thing to do regarding that.
Yeah. So
I
I was
know
trying to,
sorry, I should raise my hand.
or no, go ahead, Jenny.
I know some places have these like incentives for removing lawn. I know in like the DC area, there's a number of jurisdictions that have these incentives that if you remove a certain area of your lawn and you put pollinators in, they help. Like you then would submit your project. I don't think they give you the money up. I think it's after you're done, you submit your project, and per square foot, you get some kind of $5 per square foot back or something. Like it just helps. It doesn't cover the cost usually, but I think it helps with so the education would still need to be there to make people want to do it, but then have like the ability to alleviate some of the cost burden. So I know a number of places do that in the DC area already, but I don't know if Annapolis has ever put any of their, usually it comes out of like the stormwater fee or something like that.
Yeah, and they
within
get a reduction on their stormwater fee, I think.
yeah, either that and or just they kind of work it a couple ways.
Yeah, I definitely think those sorts of incentives are useful. I also think kind of, if I want to be a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, almost facetious. Something I like to do is kind of socially engineer and help people show off when they're being more environmentally friendly. So actually just giving people signs to brag about how, friendly their garden is to their neighbors is something that's shown to be effective. And I think also, providing the technical assistance to kind of, get people from that conception stage to implementation. It's really helpful to kind of break the knowledge gaps, but also kind of the nerves around making sure that you're doing it right. I think that could also be very useful. Obviously we don't have infinite staff time or infinite funds, but this is sort of definitely the type of outreach that I think a lot of state agencies and nonprofits like to see in grant applications. So it's something that I can definitely keep in mind.
Yeah. And just for our own talking points, just to build on that, I would love to find an article or something that shows how it doesn't degrade property value.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Because that's such a common I know I will have to educate if I did that on my own lawn. I've been thinking about doing it on my own lawn, but I already am preparing myself for the conversation I'm gonna have with my neighbors about how I'm not junking up the neighborhood. If I make it look a little more wild and weedy on the
Now, one thing I haven't looked into, to your point about it being wild, a lot of municipalities have pretty strict restrictions as to, how tall your grass can get and things like that, or how much it can encroach upon the sidewalk. So I need to look into the city code and get an understanding of like how permissible it actually is to really like let yourself have like a little pocket meadow, because that might be a serious problem.
Well, you're
Yeah.
aware the state of Maryland a few years ago passed just passed a law or statute, whatever it's called, that at least HOAs cannot prevent people from having these native habitats, these pollinator gardens.
yeah.
So so they
Very
can't, because there was a couple that like they wanted them to like dig the
Yeah.
whole thing up, right? And so there is actually a law that does protect some of that.
Wow, I
You
didn't know
should
that.
see my pollinator garden, which looks completely out of control. But I'll tell you what, all day long, right when I'm working, like right outside, I just watch the bees and the butterflies, right, all over it. Fortunately, my neighbors don't complain. So I think that I think that's a good idea, Jenny. Like what, helping people understand it's not going to lower property values. And I mean, hopefully over time, the culture will change in general about like a nice, neat lawn is not actually, the best. And it would be nice to see all these different efforts, right? So the canopy, preserving and increasing the tree canopy and the bee city and all this somehow connected together so that people can really see that they're part of contributing to something larger that's really improving the
Exactly.
community, right? So if there's a way to think about doing that and letting people know how they're helping contribute to that, I think that'd be great.
I'm gonna have to look for that Maryland code that you were talking about. Thank you. Thank you.
Paul?
Yes, thank you. Along those lines, Kathy and Jenny and Dylan, I received a stormwater credit, as you were speaking of stormwater credits, for having rain barrels in my backyard. Dylan, is there any modest incentives the city can do for people who let their lawns go a little bit more natural habitat? I realize it's easy to see yes or no, there's a rain barrel. Whether someone puts a lot of effort in, like Kathy, to have birds and bees, or somebody just lets the thing go wild, it might be a little harder to quantify what was good effort versus just inattention. So I don't know if there's any incentives there, Dylan.
You're already finding the shortcut to the inside.
Yeah, because I think you acknowledge that it is typically a stormwater fee that's getting deducted. So yeah, if you could couple it with something like that, it could be justifiable in terms of actually like the calculus as to the stormwater credit that's provided. But I think any form of incentive is possible. It's just kind of a matter of, what the higher ups or what city council would want to decide on that. It's definitely possible. I can't say anything though.
Yeah, I think it would. I mean, I'd love to see it, and kudos to Kathy, but a lot of people could just, let it go shaggy and not really the intent. So it's probably something that's not easy to quantify. So maybe Kathy just has to get by with a couple of plaques saying it's a bee garden and, some thumbs up for your good work.
As long as my neighbors like it, I'm happy. So, but yeah, no, I mean, it's also a big culture shift that's going to need to occur. That if it's a little shaggy, that's okay, right? Because it's healthier that way.
Yeah.
That's just going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time because we love our lawns.
All right. Well, I think, Paul, your hand was still up. I think you were done though,
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm taking down, but Kathy, it'd be interesting how much water you save a year as water's gradually going to become a little more expensive. It's not an issue here like the Southwest, but people save serious money by not having to compete, as a friend called it, the lawn Olympics, you know, by having it beautiful green and full of Roundup and all sorts of good things.
Yeah, I actually water very little. And my plants do okay generally.
Yeah, probably was an advantage this year. Like most lawns were just brown, unless they were under a tree in the shade or something, or watered. All right, well, I think we can just maybe move on to the resiliency and sustainability updates. Dylan, Jackie provided the written updates, so I sent those around. Dylan, you probably wanted to touch on a few of those in particular, and then I think there were a couple newer items as well, and like the bio blitz and the pumpkin chucking. I wanted to mention as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can provide a bit of a rundown as to what we've been working on and what's in these September highlights. I'm happy to take questions. You want me to just go through it like that?
Yeah, first let me see if anyone did have questions or particular topics you wanted Dylan to cover. We've already talked about the pollinator, the solar park, but I know you'll cover that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just run down, touch on the ones that you or Jackie for sure wanted to flag for us, or brag about, ask questions about.
Okay. Right. So starting off, you'll see that we're talking about a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and action plan. Regarding that, we realized that the last one that had been done was back in 2008. And it was based on 2006 data, which is consistent with what the state has been up to. You'll see that with current documents that they're talking about 2006 as a baseline. And we are keeping it consistent with the state of Maryland's goals and timelines for getting to net zero. So being coupled with an inventory, we're creating a greenhouse gas reduction plan. And so we've put out an RFP for that, pending responses and our evaluation of it. But one thing that's included in that RFP is actually including in the timeline that contractor bringing it to the Environmental Commission for you guys to actually kind of review and get an understanding of what they're going to be looking at and kind of what the scope is for implementation of different strategies. And then obviously, we would want you guys to provide some sort of input as to what you think we could be doing differently or better, or maybe what we missed. So that's something that's really exciting. Obviously super important. I can't say it's out yet. It should be posted soon. We've stopped talking with the contractors as per our procurement rules once we realized that the full cost would be a bit above the threshold for not having to go through a competitive bid process. I'll take a quick pause to take any questions or comments about the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and action plan before moving on, if anyone has any.
Doesn't look like we do.
Okay. And then we were talking about the solar park earlier regarding the pollinator habitat. So we reached out to quite a decent number of firms, I think about 10, maybe 9 total. And we received a decent amount of responses. And they're all of a variable, I don't want to say quality, but variable implementation, variable, I guess, design proposal. And the one that we ended up going with was one that it's pretty widely recommended. The name of the firm is Larry Weiner Landscape Associates. And I'm not only just very impressed with them, but they also have experience working with soil cap, which is, the main, point of concern with establishing any sort of pollinator habitat at that solar field, because it is a former landfill, as I'm sure you all know. And so we've got that geotextile membrane sitting about around 24 inches deep. So that's a bit of a concern, and we wanted to make sure that anything that was done, kept that in mind and wasn't going to conflict with that or penetrate that. So having a firm that kind of understands the dynamics of that is going to be really, really helpful. What was great about their proposal is that they actually were able to provide us sort of a really rough estimate as what the per acre implementation cost of their proposal might be in the end. So it kind of helped us with our budgeting and our understanding of, what was affordable and what wasn't. Regarding agrivoltaics, it's something that we have been exploring. As we continue to meet with Larry Weiner Landscape Associates, or LWLA is what we're calling them. It might be a point of discussion, just depending on how the solar provider feels about it, and how our engineers and Department of Public Works feel about how that fits in with the maintenance regime. There are a few maintenance requirements for different reasons. And I understand that you were talking about using agrivoltaics not only for maintenance, but also for reduction of what's currently there instead of using herbicide. And that's a discussion that we haven't had yet. I am interested by the idea. But I remember also, Jenny, you were saying that other implementation strategies have been explored where they're planting, a certain amount of seed and then it would spread. I can't remember the actual name of that strategy, but these are options instead of applying, limited herbicide. But I think in the end, we're trying to look at, which strategy, of course, provides us the strongest environmental quality and least harm, but B, also, what is effective within a good time frame and affordable. We don't want this project to be extensively time consuming or extensively costly. So it's kind of a fine balance of a lot of things, like just about anything in life. But I'm happy to provide you all as many updates as I can regarding the implementation of that project. But it is moving along, and we're very happy with where it's at. I think at some point we'll probably be posting some signage there, just kind of show the public what it's going to be looking like over different periods of time, to kind of help them understand, why things are changing, B, not be upset as to the period at which it's probably going to look a little rough before it gets a lot better. I think that's all I really have to say about that project right now, but again, happy to take any comments or questions.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about why they're opposed to the sheep grazing. I know the solar company, I saw that in the list. So, but I also saw on the agenda that there's a thing to solicit AEC members who are interested in advising on solar park pollinator planning. I'd be happy to volunteer to contribute to that.
Yeah.
And that may have.
Yeah. I mean, I think regarding the species, I think is kind of what we were looking at regarding that. What sort of different biodiversity we would like to see at the site. That's definitely something that we would be, amenable, and we would like to see some input so that we're, keeping in mind the aesthetic and ecological values of the residents at that property. So yeah, that'd be great.
I'm looking at the LWLA website, and I'd be curious just to hear what they say as far as the species for that location, given the solar requirements of the solar farm, because I'm noticing that they were the meadow consultant on the Glenstone Museum, which is really phenomenal. So,
Mhm.
but with the solar park, you know, I think I remember it has to be a certain size of species, something like that. Like because you don't, they don't want it to block out I don't know. This is just from over the last year of hearing little bits and pieces of what Jackie was learning more and more about this process. So I'm kind of curious just to learn what they are recommending. And then of course, if anyone feels like there's something missing, you know, obviously we can all contribute, but
Yeah.
I'm so curious to see what they say.
Right. Yeah. And, right now we only have kind of like a general proposal as to what they would probably end up doing, as we continue to do site visits and continue to have meetings to talk about where they're at. We can continue to touch back and provide those updates. But, regarding the solar portion of the property, yes, I believe that the minimum distance between the solar panels and the ground is about 10 inches. So yeah, that does create a significant, well, a substantial issue. So we're kind of also, well, we have to maintain relations with Novus Renewables and understand what they're comfortable with at the site. So yeah, I don't really know where that's at, where it's going to end up. But outside of the fence, there's plenty of plantable area as well, and I foresee that being a lot more flexible.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to let everyone know I'm looking at this website and very impressed with the work that company has done. So I think something good will come of it.
Every reference I called, I mean, they just had such glowing things to say. Honestly, I kind of felt like I was, I probably shouldn't bring this up. If you've seen like documentaries about, certain people, and you'll hear recorded phone calls and they'll be pretending like there's someone else hyping up their own business or something, just because these reviews were so glowing. So I was so overjoyed to see their work and hear from the different people who had worked with them, understanding all the different variables that they had to deal with, and how they engage with the public and all these different things. And yeah, I think we've got a really, really great contract on our hands, and again, excited to provide you guys as many updates as I can.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
they've done like former landfills before then, from the sound of it too. So
Yeah,
Yes.
photos are gorgeous on their website.
Mhm.
yeah, I saw one that's just across the river over there, Winchester Road. Don't think
Mhm.
I've been there, but close to home.
Yeah, they're based out of just outside of Philadelphia, and they've done work in the Annapolis area, obviously Pennsylvania, and New York, and probably a few other places. I think one place I called was in New Jersey, but they're very familiar with the Mid-Atlantic.
Very good. All right. What was the next big thing you wanted to highlight for us? And then we don't have to go through the entire list. Do you want
Sure.
the ferries?
Yeah, I can provide a bit of an update on the ferries. It's not my project per se, but it is Jackie's, and she did provide me some updates today as to what's going on with that. I'm sure you're all aware that I can't remember if it was the Resilience Authority or the county itself that received a substantial amount of funding for the project. But that's definitely a big update. Looks like I had that wrong. It looks like actually the city was awarded it. I should know that. It was awarded 2.97 million, and we have 3 years to spend the funds. So the pilot program will provide service across Spa Creek from City Dock to the end of 5th Street. There'll be weekend service between April and May, and September, October is planned at the beginning of the service, and then they'll modify the schedule as the pilot unfolds. It looks like it'll probably service 10 to 12 passengers and their bicycles. We're trying to provide as many alternative routes to driving as possible. And it seems like CityDock actually won't have any requirements for improvements to accommodate a ferry that's about 35 to 40 feet long. However, 5th Street will probably require some improvements since that landing is in poor shape structurally. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different variables that are going to this project. Most of the cost is just for the ferries themselves. A good amount of it will be going to improving 5th Street for landing. And then actually it's surprising how much the charging infrastructure will cost. And I think it'll be about $170,000. Yeah, it seems like the RFP was put out in August, and proposals are due in just a bit over a week now, October 4th. So yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to provide on that. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, the city was awarded the $3 million in 22, and now the county just received another $4 million for ferries that are across Annapolis, Baltimore, and Queen Anne's County. That makes sense. Yeah, not the project leader on that. I was really kind of just going through what Jackie was providing me an update on. But I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and if I don't know the answer, I can relay it back to Jackie and get back to you.
I was wondering if it competes with the existing water taxis. Will those still exist?
Mm-hmm. I can't answer that question. I don't think anything is being replaced. I'm to be completely frank with you, I'm not sure who runs the ferry or the taxi service.
Yeah,
So I'll have to get back to you on that.
And then maybe this is just maybe Jack, it's a question for Jackie, but just is this like city ferry, will it connect at all to this larger ferry project? The second one that you mentioned, that's like Anne Arundel and Queen Anne and Baltimore. And I don't know if that connects at all to those.
From my understanding, no, it's not going to be part of that route. I think the pilot is, mainly just providing intercity or intercity, or that'd be intercity ferry routes. But that could change, or I could be wrong. Again, I'll have to get back to you on that. But I don't believe it's part of that wider Chesapeake route.
Paul?
Yeah, and echoing Kathy, probably not, this is not the venue to speak of it too much, but the Hartman family, Debbie Gosling runs the tourist boats and the water taxi, what some people refer to as the buck boat. And I don't think there's going to be enough volume of pedestrians and bicycle riders if we take the total cost of this project divided by how many people are going to ride on it in 6 or 7 months a year, when we already have a private enterprise doing something similar, I'm all for environmental and green and all that, but boy, now the water taxi, does not have anything really set up well for bikes, but that could easily be done. It just, I guess the big thing is, has people further up in the city spoken to Debbie Gosling about this much? She runs Annapolis, the water taxis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not quite the venue, but it's something I ought to bring up with others, because I just, I'm not against ferries and electric ferries, but it seems a little redundant, and we've already got private enterprise trying to solve this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I can't speak to that, but I invite you to,
Yeah,
of this discussion.
yeah, I know who to go talk. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
And Dylan, when you say Fifth Street, I did look it up on the map. Are we talking about like that street end that does flood, like right next to the city marina?
Yeah,
that's
Fifth Street
just-
on Newport.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would have to get built up in a way to allow like drop off and pick up, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah, it does flood. Yeah, so a substantial amount of the funds are going towards that, which is, an indirect benefit of, having this program be funded. We're able to remediate a lot of the issues at that site, as well as, get some source of alternate transportation.
And if it's really just the pilot stage, it'd just be running from City Dock to that Fifth Street, but it seems like there could be a lot more interest potentially if there was if it would go around to Back Creek as well, like especially once the new park is
Mhm.
on board. I mean, that's a whole other peninsula. I mean, if you were to take a ferry from like that peninsula on the other side of Back Creek, could really save yourself either a long bike ride or a lot of walking, busing.
Mhm. Yeah. Like I said, it is a pilot, and I think you're right. Providing a wider array of destinations with this project, I think could not only provide, just a more useful service, but also a more equitable service to get to some of those communities that may not be able to afford to get onto a boat, or may not be able to afford to kind of catch that cultural heritage with the Chesapeake Bay. So I think that could be great. I think I've heard some murmurs about something like that, but yeah, at this time I can't really say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's see. Any new developments on EV chargers, vehicle chargers in the last couple months?
Yeah, definitely. So we put in our final application for the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program, ECBG. No, Community Block Grant Program. I got it. We were allocated about $76,000 for that. And so we put in mainly for city fleet charging stations, but some of them will be accessible to the public. The reason is that we are trying to provide the infrastructure necessary to convert our city fleet from ICE to just about all EV if we can. It's not feasible everywhere. So that's mainly where those funds will be going. We also are including in that application some battery backups. We will be putting, the plan is to put a DC fast charger at the police department, so that in the future, if they're able to get EVs, they're able to charge their vehicles as quickly as possible. But say if in the event of a hurricane or something, the power goes out, and now they don't have any cruisers that they're able to charge, that's a serious problem. So we would want some serious battery backups that could actually recharge with some solar arrays of their own in that event. So we put in for that as well in the grant application. Furthermore, you'll see in that in the highlights that we partnered with Maryland Clean Energy Center and BG&E to select some locations in the city that we think would be viable for technology called Volt Post, and essentially retrofits city light posts to add on EV charging. And so we chose locations that were, mostly servicing low to moderate income, or multifamily dwellings where they don't have a ton of parking. One of the biggest constraints was actually selecting light posts that were on the curb side of the sidewalk, because obviously you don't want a EV charger line blocking the sidewalk. That would be bad. So, we put in for that. I think we put in 18 locations, and I don't have any updates on either of those grants right now, but, we're feeling pretty good about them. And that would go a decent way of providing a decent amount more of EV charging in the city. And of course, we're going to be looking at more in the future. I think we're trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of the number of EVs that are out there, but we also don't want to have so many that we're actually limiting the amount of parking. We don't want a bunch of empty spaces. So it's a little bit of a dance to play with that. Yeah, I think that's all on EV right now. I'm just double checking. Oh yeah, we did install the EV fast charger at the visitors center, which I'm sure you're all aware of. Yeah, does anyone have any quick questions about EV charging or any suggestions about what we can be doing there?
On the bolt post, in those 18 locations, will there be any sort of what sort of broadcast or splash or outreach will be made if those are going to start going in and showing up?
Mhm.
How do we make sure people are aware that that's
Yeah.
what they're there to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it would, be cooperating with the community organizations that are based, where those are selected, and just making sure that we're connecting with that public-private partnership to, dip into their network and use that established trust to help the residents there understand what they are, like you're saying, and not misinterpret what it is, or we obviously want people using them. I think coupled with that, we might also want to put out some outreach about the incentives that are out there to help residents across the state afford EVs, and talking about the tax breaks and things like that. Because we are talking about, like I said, low to moderate income households or multifamily dwellings where people might not be able to afford an EV as easily as someone in the more affluent locations in the city. So we want to make sure that they're using every incentive that is available to them. I think it's kind of how we're looking at it right now. Of course, we would be putting out some social media about it, and a press release. It probably won't be anything revolutionary in terms of public outreach. Could maybe do some door knocking, but yeah, it's kind of TBD. I'll of course take any suggestions on that. I do appreciate the question.
And just one last reminder then, what that timeline might be for those 18 spots.
Yeah, I mean, you hit me with good questions here, Jeremy. I don't quite know what the timeline is for that. It depends, of course, so how it would work is MCEC, Maryland Clean Energy Center, they put in the grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for the charging and fueling infrastructure round 2. And if MCEC were to be awarded, they would pass it through to VoltPost, and then VoltPost would be responsible for the implementation. So it could be 2 years from now. That's kind of
okay.
estimate. Maybe it could be a year. I don't want to say for sure, but how these things go between final engineering and then permitting. Sometimes there's issues with procurement.
Gotcha. No, I think I misunderstood where in the grant process it was. So
yeah, it was applied. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
No, I think you did. That's just a long day. All right. Were there any other questions from others on EV?
Not a question, but I just feel like you and Jackie have done a ton of work on this in a really short amount of time. I think it's awesome where you're headed with this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed. And just thinking about how much the EV infrastructure has grown since I started coming to the commission meetings. It's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's definitely a big issue, and it's definitely one of the areas where we can make I think, the most impact, making sure our community is ready for that transition, getting rid of those tailpipe emissions. We don't have a lot of industry in town, so where we can cut, we will cut.
Right.
All right, yeah. So moving on, unless you'd like to move to something else, Jeremy, feel free to cut me off at any point.
No, move on to the next highlight.
So, yeah, there were the stormwater restoration projects. We're talking about Hawkins Cove and different things like this. A lot of this is, regarding Chesapeake Bay Trust. I believe this was through the Watershed Assistance grant program that they have. This is something that's a bit more on the DPW side, but it is something that we are tangentially involved with in terms of, watershed restoration and the resilience around that, these specific projects. So I can't provide a whole lot of detail. One of the projects that I am really excited about is actually that it was the Alliance to develop a cost share maintenance program. One thing that we find is consistently an issue with BMPs that we're getting credit for MS4 is you have to maintain them. And if after 3 years they're no longer being maintained and they're in poor order, they're not functioning, you actually lose that credit. So, through these funds that, we provide and are matched by CBT to a certain extent, we're able to establish this cost share maintenance program, which should really make it more consistent and predictable for how different BMPs are being maintained. And really looking forward to seeing how that is developed. It seems to be one of the first of its kind. So, tip my hat to DPW. They're doing a great job with the MS4 program. I can try to take some questions about that if anyone had them. But like I said, I haven't been super involved with those, so I may not be able to answer all the questions. Okay, move on. Yes, the plastic bag ban, or sorry, we're calling it the Plastic Bag Reduction Act, I think is the formal name. We created an informational webpage, and we are in the process of ordering a substantial amount of reusable bags that we're going to be distributing out to different community partners. We're talking churches, we're talking food drives, community-based organizations that help with underserved communities. And I think we'll also be trying to be doing some pop-up events where we distribute the bags ourselves. But partnering with those organizations is typically the best practice because you're able to give them a certain amount, and they have a good understanding of where people really need them. So we like to leverage those different partnerships. That goes into effect January 22nd. So it's fast approaching. And we're going to make sure that we're continuing to do public outreach about that. We actually don't think we've done the press release on that yet. I know we did the gas-powered leaf blower press release recently. We're kind of trying to balance the communications about the two, just so people aren't overwhelmed. But yeah, excited to move forward on that. It's not my first rodeo with the Plastic Bag Reduction Act. So, I'm kind of anticipating where the hard points are going to be, but again, excited about that. And like I was just talking about the gas-powered leaf blower ban, we put out those communications and we will continue to. We're going to put out some flyers this week. It was discussed if, different implementation date might be taken on that. But it was decided against it. So, we're moving forward with that. But we have been communicating with some of the local landscapers to kind of understand, where the legislation may or may not be, affecting their operations and, how they're kind of planning on adapting to the change. I'll take a pause again to answer any questions. Yes, Paul?
Thank you for this. And it's funny being the old Bill O'Leary and I being the old silverbacks, we've been talking about this for a number of years, and we're happy to see it going forward. COVID rightfully slowed it down, but my 2 points are, because we're talking about the same thing 6 or 7 years ago, it would be nice if the bags had some type of tasteful design, not to go too far, whether it's just a sketch of a cityscape or something that, looks, okay, help me out, ladies. It's not going to be fashionable, but something that's presentable. And the other thing is a lot of, bags become expensive if they're well made. Just make sure the handle wraps all the way around the bag. This is a silly little detail, but if you just have handles on the side of the bag, they're going to pull out at some point. Look at the firewood that your grandpa carried in, right? The strap goes all the way around. That's the load. The handle has to be the load bearing, or otherwise the handles are going to fall off. So that's the structure part. And then just, a nice sketch drawing looking, top of Main Street, looking down at the water or wherever. Just make it look that, it has a little pizzazz to it.
Sure. I'm actually going to send you all an updated Sustainable Annapolis logo that, we sketched together recently. I plan on putting that on the bags, into different suggestions. And regarding, the structural integrity of the bag, I'm ahead of you, Paul.
Good.
I ordered a bunch of them as samples. And my stress test was grabbing the handles and just sticking my foot in there and just seeing how long it takes for me to tear it apart. And based on their stress test there is what I made my selection around. A little rudimentary, but it works.
Well, that's practical.
That's one way of putting it. I'll send that logo. I am curious to know what you guys think about it.
If you were interested in this, so Paul, you just inspired an idea. If you were interested in kind of bringing a little pizzazz, so to speak, or elevating the bag a little bit, that makes me think of the local group Art Farm that does design, and they work with all ages of people, and they have art classes and things like that. But they also do their own design, and they put on the Art Week for Annapolis. And I bet if you had someone from their group, part of this funded a little design exercise very quickly, they could make something very cool. So just something to consider. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but it's at the same time, since it is going out to the community and some people may be a little uptight about it, they're having it be something, the replaceable item being something from a community organization could be, I don't know, a nice piece.
And you are saying art to put on the bag?
Yeah, like having a local group design it. And so that would be one that I would say I could recommend, because I know they do a lot of great work already for the city and in the city around art. And so to add some kind of like, I think there was like a moment a summer ago where Trader Joe bags were like in demand in like even in other countries. It's strange what catches. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, perhaps if it, if there was a little more thought into the bag, since you are going as far as to make them, it could become a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Our very own Madeline, who some of you might have seen when we first joined this call, was able to help me a little bit. Well, actually, she pretty much did the whole thing. She's fantastic. She provided a logo specific to the Plastic Bag Reduction Act. So I'm going to send it to you guys now, and let me know what you think. And if you feel like we should get back to the drawing board, then yeah, I'd be happy to bring in some local community members to help out. Okay.
Paul, go ahead.
Dylan, approximately how many bags are you ordering? And yeah, it's your first time doing it, so it's a wild guess. But how long do you think the first round of orders or first round of bags will last, and then you'll reorder? The reason I ask this is, you're not going to order 8 million bags. You're going to order X amount. As time goes on, I'll shut up in a moment, but you're probably going to be ordering bags twice a year or something. And that gives us the opportunity further down the road for Allison and others to, contribute additional design. So about how many bags do you think you're going to order, and how long do you think they'll last?
Yeah, good question. So currently in the budget, we were allocated $5,000 specifically for these reusable bags, which gets us around 2,500, maybe 3,000 really high quality bags. So in terms of how long they last, it's funny because I did get those samples from a couple. No, I only used one company for the samples, but I tested out quite a few and ended up going with the exact same one that I used in Salisbury. And I've had that one for over a year now. I kept one for myself, and it's still in fantastic shape.
I'm interrupting a bit, but I misspoke or not clear enough. Wasn't asking so much how long a bag would last, is how long will the supplies last, and then we have to push the button and order more.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. The supplies will last as long as I guess the partnered organizations are willing to dish them out. When we're talking about a food drive, say they serve 200 or so people a month, we would probably give them 200 to start with, and then kind of feel it out from there. So one fund of 2,000 to 3,000 bags, I can see it easily being dished out in about a year, maybe as little as 6 months. But I'm not sure, where we're at in terms of reestablishing that fund. That wouldn't be up to me. That would be up to council. So I'll have to evaluate the need as I go forward. And, if I determine that it's something I would recommend council providing more funds for, then I would go ahead and do so. But it is a good point you bring up. We do want to make sure that everyone who needs a bag is getting a bag. Yeah, sometimes it takes longer than just one fiscal year.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then knowing that they're going to be replenished at some point gives opportunities down the road for more designs to be slapped on them,
Right. Did everyone get the logos I sent? I could share my screen if not.
I think I see it. Yep. I think that looks good.
Yeah, I like that. That's nice.
Referring to the Osprey or the Sustainable Annapolis logo?
Sustainable Annapolis one.
You'd like to see that on the bag?
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind the osprey. I mean, the osprey's nice. I don't know about the bat, him holding the bag though.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if that was like,
It's a little confused. It's a confusing message. It's like, is the bag stuck on the osprey or is the osprey going shopping?
That's
Yeah.
true. I hadn't
Yeah,
thought
you
of
guys are
that.
not the first to react that way. It was my idea, so I'll take full blame.
Sorry.
The idea was, like the ospreys
Taking them
taking away
away.
environmental harm. But yeah, I can definitely see that it sort of looks like it's getting tangled up with a plastic bag for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm glad we like the Cinnabon Annapolis logo. Definitely for the first stock, I can use that. But maybe I can also do like half the order with that and dish out those. And,
Yeah.
I can expect maybe those to be dished out in 3 months. And, if someone's interested in providing another logo, that could definitely be cool. Yeah.
To make you newer members to the board envious, Kate Bohannon, who has moved out of town, I'm bringing up plastic bags. Kate took us on a field trip to the transfer station, which Dylan knows is code word for the dump and the recycling place.
Mhm.
Don't know if I've ever been someplace so noisy and smelly, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry you guys missed out on that. But what was interesting, it's really cool. It's like a whole Rube Goldberg, it uses air to float the lightweight things, gravity dump the heavy things. It's pretty impressive in engineering. But my point and why I'm bringing this up is the guy said the single biggest problem they have with the entire operation is plastic bags gum up the rollers or the this. I mean, again, it's Rube Goldberg, so there's a lot of stuff, different methods, but the plastic bags jam it up several times a day, and it stops, and it takes, even if it's just 10 minutes, it happens a couple times a day in a big facility. Plastic bags are a big problem, and apparently they, to some degree, monitor how much plastic bags are showing up from Annapolis versus, I don't know, Towson or Bowie or wherever, the ones they feed. And Annapolis is getting a little better rate on the amount they take because we have less plastic bags. So there's I'm sure it's a fraction of a fraction, but there is some financial incentive to be, when we send upstream or downstream, I guess downstream, to the people who take care of this trash, we get a little bit or better rate per ton or cubic yard, because we have less plastic bags in our trash.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember when it had been done in Salisbury, there was just a noticeable difference immediately, much in the same way that the styrofoam ban had, removed a lot of that trash. So, yeah, there's a lot of different reasons. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and again, I hope you guys schedule a meeting there someday, Jeremy. A field trip. Okay.
all right, well, noting the time, Dylan, not sure if you have anything to say about the BioBlitz other than that it's happening, but I probably want to touch on that, and then the pumpkin chucking. Did you want input on that?
I mean, right now it's kind of just in the conceptual phase. A local partner reached out to DPW, and DPW coordinated with me. And they were interested in potentially doing a pumpkin chucking, pumpkin smashing event somewhere in the city. The idea is that, it not only would be a fun family activity, but it also would be surrounded by composting. So it'd be providing outreach for that, and then also providing, the ability to compost your pumpkins at that specific location, wherever the location might be. Typically around Halloween and Thanksgiving, we will expand our composting operation just because of all the pumpkins and all the food and blah, blah, blah. So coupling with that would be ideal. So I think it could be a really fun, composting outreach program. I'll definitely smash quite a few pumpkins if it happens. Not too much else to report on that. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it's a project that we're interested in, and yeah, we'll provide more updates on that as it moves along. And then going down, these notes. Yeah, I mean, again, on the pollinator BioBlitz, that will be finishing up in about 5 days. September has really kind of flown by. We've had about 250 observations total, about 53 people participate so far, which is great. Yeah, whoever provides the most biodiversity, excuse me, on the project page in a city park, I would win a free week of access to Pitmoyer. So that's fun. Yeah, it's been a good engagement operation. I'm happy with it. And I think that's really all that I would want to talk about right now regarding the highlights. Can move into the resilience plan. Anything else you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Kathy, you had a question?
Yes, I did want to hear about the resilience plan. That was one thing I was going to mention as we're getting short on time. But the other thing, like these public education campaigns, I think as we start to move, because like 2025, we're going to want to do another, like review our list of priorities. And I don't know if there's interest from the commission to get more involved in some public outreach. I think it's in the description of what we do. And Dylan, what might be, if that would be helpful to you and Jackie, because you're like an office of two, right? You're doing so many different things. But I for one would be very interested in, doing some participating in public outreach, supporting your office. Don't want to speak for the rest of the commission, but maybe as you have these events, right? If there a way I could help, I'd be happy to. But as we start to look at our 2025 priorities, maybe we can talk a little bit about that as a group.
Yeah, I love the idea. And we love as much support as we can get. So I would definitely love to work with you guys on all sorts of different things. But yeah, bringing up the enabling legislation for the Environmental Commission is a good point. I'm not sure if it's in there, but I'm not going to speak for Jeremy as to how the Environmental Commission wants to get involved with volunteering and outreach and things like that. But again, I love the idea.
I think we can always offer assistance individually. As I say here to what Kathy said, and we'll also just compliment the city's Facebook page whenever they do share like information and graphics about like how to recycle or properly dispose of things. I think they always do a phenomenal job with the graphics and explanations of how to sort your recycling or trash and everything else. So I think, I'm not sure if that's information is coming from someone in DPW or where it's coming from, but it's always really good. Yeah,
regarding solid waste, that does come from DPW. Yeah, they've communicated that well. It's been good.
Yeah, they know what they're talking about. They do a good job.
This is good.
And so I guess we should probably move on to the resilience plan, and then there's at least one other thing I wanted to cover. So, Dylan, what's the status or timeline for
that? So this is definitely a big one. About a month ago, Jackie and I put our heads together and kind of analyzed the current and relevant plans in the city that have anything to do with sustainability and the environment. So we were looking at the capital improvement plan. We're looking at obviously the recent comprehensive plan, but also different things like the military installation resilience review, the hazard mitigation plan, and the coupled flood resilience plan that came with that. And then some other documents, analyses of different neighborhoods in the city, and really just getting a feel for where the current landscape of resilience planning is in terms of those big grand documents. I think a lot of times in government redundancy is good, but we didn't want to develop a plan that would conflict with any of the goals or any of the projections that were identified in those plans. So the first step in establishing a framework for the plan was really getting a feel for what vulnerabilities, what climate stressors, and what strategies were being assessed in those plans. And so, right now I'm in the process. I pretty much just finished up highlighting all the different assessed climate stressors on the city that were identified in those plans. And I'm really kind of identifying the gaps into, where future climate stressors are going to make threats to different infrastructure and environmental amenities in the city, and how that might have a cascading effect on human health, on the economy. And then from there, going to take all those different factors, all those different sectors, whether it's transportation, whether it's energy, or whether it's soil quality. I mean, all of these different interconnected things with these climate stressors, and how the strategies that have been identified to remediate some of these issues, how they might be effective according to different projections on heat, on increased storms or increased storm severity, obviously sea level rise and different things. So really, kind of right now, the resilience plan is shaping up to be more of a climate resilience plan that's aiming to provide sort of a guiding document as to how we should be making our decisions moving forward regarding the stressors of the climate on the city of Annapolis. The hazard mitigation plan talks about a variety of things beyond just climate and weather. Obviously it talks about storms, it talks about sea level rise, and it also talks about other threats, and analyzes the vulnerability and breaks down even the direct cost that damage to those facilities might cause. But we want to understand, based on different scenarios, where should we be moving forward to kind of create a holistic long-term vision for how we should be planning out our city to adapt to this changing climate, which it's predictable for what a climate action, climate resilience plan would be. But we're not currently at this moment incorporating a ton of sustainability principles. So that might be something in a separate document, or maybe we can couple it together in like a resilience and sustainability plan later on. But right now, like I said, we're evaluating the current planning structure. We're evaluating, where the city's capabilities are to respond to the issues as of now, and then what needs to be looked at to establish a guide going forward. So, I don't know when I can provide a draft to the commission. Obviously we need to edit it amongst ourselves, after the first draft is complete. But then, we don't want documents to be shared if they're not ready to be shared. So I can't exactly say when I'll be able to review this with the commission, but it is exciting, and I'm willing, obviously, to take any suggestions or questions as to the methodology, and as to why we're choosing to do certain things, or provide or receive suggestions about things that we should be thinking about.
Thanks, Dylan. And Kathy, before you go, I just want to clarify then, like the resilience plan itself, I mean, you don't have a necessarily a schedule right now because there's nothing really specific in terms of either existing grant requirements or ordinances or expectations from the council or the mayor as to like when we need this done by. So it's just kind of it'll be ready when it's ready situation.
Yeah, and to be more clear, this current draft is giving us an idea as to the current needs that there exist for providing a resilience framework in the city based on what's been identified in the past in these different plans. And so once we're able to provide that clear picture of what's currently being done, what hasn't been addressed, what can be done, once we can provide that to different stakeholders, we can really start to look at those things that you're talking about, specific strategies in specific areas, specific funding sources and things like that. That would really provide us a more robust and effective plan. And that's why I'm calling this at the present moment, kind of a guide and not necessarily like an action plan or an implementation plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Kathy?
Couple of questions. So you said there was enabling legislation. Does it require it to be called a resilience plan, or can it be called a climate resilience plan? Because it sounds like what you're describing is a climate resilience plan, where I know there are jurisdictions that are doing resilience plans that are much broader in scope, right? And so I was wondering what the actual requirement was for the name.
I'm not sure if there's necessarily requirements around that might be a question for, frankly, the Department of Planning, State Department of Planning, but I don't think there's specific requirements for what you might call these different plans. I'm sure there's suggestions, but yes, you're right. We are currently calling this a climate resilience plan. Other jurisdictions have called similar documents like Vision 2100 or Blank City 2100. Like I said, providing an assessment of what's currently being done and what's possible to understand as to how we might want to move forward on specific things in coming decades. So name is kind of a working title at the moment, but yeah, climate resilience plan. Good
yeah, because I know I've reviewed a lot of resilience plans as part of my day job. And if you look at Colorado or Jacksonville, Florida, the scope of those is inclusive of climate, but goes way beyond climate. And those are
definitely, yeah, good point.
I do remember seeing, and I haven't looked in the approved comp plan, but I do remember seeing the resilience plan mentioned in the draft, and very minimally, but I remember one of the things in there was something about housing too. So it didn't seem like it was climate related, and maybe that fell out of the resilience plan at some point. I'll go back and look. But I am interested because I noticed on the agenda, you said you were looking for AEC members who are interested in advising on the resilience plan, and I'm wondering if there's a chance for us to see it at the outline stage versus for a drafted plan, sort of an earlier look at it, understanding that, you want to share it when it's ready.
Right.
But I think that for a group like this one, and it being a climate resilience plan, having, some early input would be, I would like to be able to do that.
No, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And it's something I would like to do. I just don't want to speak on behalf of, the resilience sustainability team as to when that might be. So it's something I want to do, and I'll provide more updates as it comes along, but it makes a ton of sense, and I don't see why we wouldn't. Again, I'm just not exactly sure when that would be.
So could you maybe get some clarity on the agenda item that asks for, soliciting AEC members who are interested in advising on it, as opposed to the commission itself? I'm not clear on what the difference is there.
Yeah, and that's really just me throwing that agenda together. So I
Oh.
think that was
Okay.
I may have jumped the gun a little bit on that, but I do agree with you. Like if there's an opportunity and for interested commission members to advise and report um, earlier in this process, I think that would benefit the subsequent public comment. I assume there would be a public comment period. So
Yeah, and I guess before I turn over to Jenny, just, this, you mentioned this resilience and sustainability group. Like, so who is on this plan? Are there any just residents, citizens, or are these all city employees who are participating in this group?
Regarding the planning effort at the moment, this is currently just a resilience and sustainability project. Just regarding the outline and sort of the assessment of where the city is at in terms of providing resilience for its infrastructure. But as we move forward and create, that guide, or maybe down the line when we're considering more formal action plans, is definitely when we're going to be looking at different stakeholders and different departments. But at the moment, just because we're building off the work of those collaborative efforts, whether it be the military installation resilience review or the hazard mitigation plan, they've done a lot of that legwork. And so we're currently just assessing it. So at the moment, we don't currently feel like there's a lot of need to be bringing in different stakeholders. But like I'm saying, that's going to develop as we go on.
great. Well, in the last 5 minutes, I did just want to mention something I just heard about in the last couple days, but regarding the whole Watershed Act, which those of you, I think many of you are aware of what that legislation was that was passed this past session. If not, my summary of it is it's legislation that was passed to help address, I'd say, lack of desired effectiveness in Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts, random acts of restoration or conservation, you might want to call it. I don't personally like that term, but so this legislature passed this bill to try to make the state agencies work together and incentivize consortiums or collaborations at a watershed level. In this case, it'd be the Maryland Huck 8s. So fairly not super local, but not really large basins. So there'd be funding for up to 5 of these collaborative focused efforts for up to 5 watersheds that would meet certain criteria. And the idea there is to really leverage efforts from broad networks of stakeholders and NGOs, local governments, nonprofit, like the whole spectrum, ideally, while also building and emphasizing things like monitoring and like measuring the outcomes and benefits to communities. So with that rambling description, I was pleased to learn like the actual RFP for the whole watershed fund doesn't come out until next week, but a lot of the NGOs and local governments have already been on top of this, getting ready for that to come out so that they're ready to really respond and have the strongest possible proposals. The county has reached out to, I believe, Jackie, and they did reach out to me because they're interested in putting in a proposal for the Severn, which is a Huck 8 watershed. So they want to put in a proposal for the Severn Basin, which I think would be fantastic. I'm not sure what the odds of it being accepted or awarded will be, because I'm sure it'll be very stiff competition. And the Severn doesn't have a lot of agricultural activity, which is one of the criteria they're looking for. And a couple others we wouldn't qualify for either. But we still have I think, a strong chance, just given the demographics of the region, we might still have a chance. So just wanted people to know, to be aware that that's happening and something to be excited about, and hopefully it works out for the Severn. If not, I'm hopeful that the whole Watershed Act will be something that continues to happen every 5 years and really lives up to its promise, but just wanted folks to be aware. Dylan, I'm not sure if you have anything to add. It sounded like, from what I've seen, it looks like Jackie was the main point of contact and that the Resilience Authority might be the primary sponsor for the actual submission, but there's a lot of partners involved.
Yeah, that's the right way of putting it. There's a lot of people involved, and so it is actually a little bit unclear as to how all the partners are feeling about who's going to be the primary applicant. I think given the extent of funding and kind of how multivariable these funds are going to be, yeah, I mean, the Resilience Authority it's looking like it's probably going to be the one, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the Resilience Authority, but yeah,
Fair enough. And as far as our role as a commission would be very humble, but I think we can at least hopefully commit, if a letter of support would be helpful, just to say that we are more than willing to help advise the city within the definition of its role within the proposal, and also help with community, their own respective or individual communities, and their on the ground outreach efforts. I think that's totally within reason.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that it is 9 o'clock. So let's see, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jenny.
I second that.
Thank you, Paul. All right. With that, we'll consider ourselves adjourned for the evening. Our next meeting will be the fourth Wednesday in October, October 23rd. So look forward to our conversation then. Wish everyone